What's good, everybody? Hope you are having a wonderful week so far. Podcast. If you're listening, if you're new to this, if you're not new to this and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. It means the world to me and allows the podcast to keep going. This week on the podcast, Luke Neville. He owns a company called Listen Up. Listen Up is a music PR company. They help artists get their music on radio, get their music on Spotify playlists, and they also look after press, aka magazines, blogs, internet sites, Instagram sites, literally all music promotion. One of the best companies in electronic dance music. They also work in hip hop, pop music, all genres of music, but mostly specifically electronic music. I've worked with Listen Up for years. I've known Luke for quite a while, and I wanted to get him on the podcast just to talk about what they do as a company, what he does. So we speak a lot about music business, radio, Spotify, music promotion, and some good stories from the good old days. So without further ado, Luke Neville. Mr. Luke Neville, we are live. How are you, mate?
I'm very good, thanks, Will. Thanks for having me on.
We had some technical issues at the start.
Yeah, but we're here now. I'd like to point out that it probably was my fault, but
I'm confused why that happened. But also, when you came on, I was like, "Oh, you've got like a nice back. You've got like a Zoom background, like one of those like AI backgrounds." And then I realized it's actually your wallpaper.
It is my wallpaper. No, it's actually the woods behind my chair. But yeah, no, I've got wallpaper there that was done before Zooms even existed, before we had lockdown or any of that stuff. And everyone's like, "Oh, I love your background," but it's legit. I had it for a long time.
It's a good one. I like it a lot. How's life? Are you about to go to Miami?
Life is good. I'm not going to Miami. I've got a very special friend's birthday that we miss every year, and it's got an O in it, so we can't miss it when it's got an O in it. So yes, we're staying in London, which is a real shame. I haven't missed one for about 30 years.
Is that why Anton's not going as well?
That's why Anton's not going, Jacko's not going, Duzon's not going. It's Jacko's better half, basically, and we're under strict orders not to attend Miami this year. So
that's understandable.
Yeah, so I'll miss standing poolside with you, having a drink and a good catch up, but we can catch up now.
We can catch up here. And to be fair, like, I'm slightly jealous that you're missing it, because I really am not a fan.
No, you know what? A lot of people aren't that bothered. I actually love it.
Do you?
And it's very good for work as well, I'd like to point out. But it is a good thing because I get to see so many people.
Yeah.
Some events like IMS or ADE is great because you see lots of industry people, which is great on the business side. But Miami, I get to see all the DJs and artists we work with, which is great. And in a nice casual environment, Well,
I guess also, like, it's not actually that often that you get to spend time with all of the people that you actually work with that Listen Up.
Exactly. And that's the good thing about it. And also at the same time, it's not always about just seeing the people we work with. It's about trying to find new talent, new people to work with going forward,
So talking about that, first of all, can you explain to people that are listening what you actually do in the company that you run?
What I do is I have a company, obviously. It's called Listen Up. We started 15 years ago as purely which was my expertise at the time, was radio promotions. And then that developed into a press business. And now and also club promotions and streaming services. And we do that via the London office and our LA office. And we promote music, and predominantly electronic music, but not. We do a lot of black music, rap, hip hop, etc. With singer-songwriters, everyone from Ray through to Doja Cat. So yeah, that's what we do.
And what's your like specific role in the company? Because it's obviously changed over the years as well.
Yeah. I got to say, I think it's been said before that successful people should employ people who are much better than they are. and I have a brilliant team who are so much better at everything than me. But I'm a jack of all trades but master of none, and I just kind of piece everything together.
Fair. Did it
Yeah.
start as being a DJ for you?
I did start as being a DJ. Yeah, I sort of fell into being a DJ in the late 90s or early 90s, and I never intended it to be a career, and did that for like 20 years. Um, and then even during that whole period, I never really felt like it was a career. It was just like, I was a weekend warrior DJing,
Yeah.
and then during the week I worked at Universal Music, did A&R for 7 or 8 years, and then just fell into radio plugging because someone played a record. I thought, well, that sounds good. We should give it to Pete Tong. I reckon he'll like that. And he made an essential new tune. And then the following Monday, someone said, you should be a radio plugger. And that's kind of how I ended up doing it. And then eventually transferred into working full time for the business and not doing DJing because it was just too hard to balance the two, especially with family and etc. So I had to commit to one or the other. And I love, and I actually DJ a little bit now and then, just for a laugh, just for mates parties. And I haven't done that for maybe 10 years because work has been all consuming. But I have never lost the passion for new music, which is what DJing was for me. It was always about having new music, and the beauty of what we do at Listen Up is all about finding new talent, developing new artists, finding new music, and that's the stuff that still gets the juices going.
Yeah, definitely. I think it goes back from the early DJ days as well. You're literally like record hunting, going to record shops, finding new records, and you're pretty much doing the same thing now, but
100%. I mean, look, I'm on SoundCloud looking for new stuff. Purely for me. Really, yeah. Purely for me. Not necessarily stuff to work, but purely for me to have. And I've got, a record box full of records that I'll never play out but I just get the buzz and excited about new music. I go through Spotify every Friday. My release radar. I try and find what's new, and obviously the algorithms find what you're into. But I just, I listen to radio shows, podcasts. I want to hear what's new. I still go to nightclubs. I'm shazamming DJs and work out what that record is.
It's really interesting that, because I've like stopped all of that to a certain extent. I've stopped, like, don't get me wrong, I listen to a lot of music. I pretty much stopped consuming electronic music on a regular for the last maybe like 3-4 years. Yeah. Where it, like, and I'm not too sure why I stopped it, but yeah, it was never like something where I'd go and hunt for new stuff. I'm not too sure why, but it's weird that I don't.
Yeah. You know what? I've just never stopped. And whether that is techno, house, hip hop, whatever, I just everything. People always ask me, because I've been around a while, to play parties playing old music, and for the older crowd. And as much as I do it occasionally, that's not what gets the juices flowing. I played those records when they were new music, when they were the hot new thing.
Yeah.
I still get a buzz from new music. I think that's what's kept me going in this industry for 25, 30 years, is just, the buzz and excitement of new music. When I was an A&R, hearing something, thinking, oh, maybe we should signing it, and then going on to be a massive hit. It was never the intention of I want this to be a massive hit, sell loads of records, or it was always about, I like this. It's given me the feels, and then where it ends up, who knows? But I just still love new music.
No, I really like that, and it's actually really refreshing to hear somebody that's like obviously works in the industry, that's like not jaded by the industry in that sense of like you're wanting to do that. And obviously it's great that you run Listen Up and you guys are interested in new artists and new music. I guess I
think I know more about new music and what's hot and who's played what than a lot of the staff who work for me. It's just something that's I've never stopped doing. Never stopped.
I love that. I love that a lot. I'd like to get your take from what you were saying about playing older music. I'd love to get your take on the regurgitation of old records being sampled now into new dance records.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously a lot of people send us music, record labels, managers, etc., artists, say, "Oh, I've got this new record, what do you think?" And we don't take on work unless we think we can do a job with it. But quite often we're getting sent these records with samples in that I played 20 odd years ago.
Yeah.
And I have to listen to them differently because this the cynical me will listen to them and think, "Oh, can I swear on this?" The cynical me will be like, "Fuck, you can't do that." Do you know what I mean? You can't do that. That's blasphemy.
Yeah.
You know, that's like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
And then quite often I do this. I have a 24-hour rule with whether it's sending a moody email to someone or whether it's making a definitive decision on a record. Is I'll go back and listen to it with fresh ears, you know what I mean? And listen to it with, try and have a bit more of an open-minded perspective on it. And I'll listen to it and it's got this old regurgitated sample and be like, actually, this is 25 years old. The people you want to listen to that weren't even born then. You know, the people who are going to consume that, the majority, the demographic, they wouldn't even know it from first time round. And I think I've got to not be so cynical and appreciate that it's a good idea. You know, obviously if the production's whack or whatever, then fine, but I don't want to be dismissive purely because someone sampled a great old record.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that, because so many of these records that are starting to do well again are old classics. But again, if we truly like take the old man hat off and look at it, like 25 years ago, a lot of what everyone was sampling, people were saying exactly the same thing. It's like, oh, this sample was 20 years old. Why would anyone want to listen to this? It's exactly the same.
Let's be real. House music, whatever you read about, what is about, you know, taking things from other great records, sample, disco, you know, hip hop, whatever, and turning them into house records. It's the way we've always done it, you know.
Yeah. I guess, what's your thoughts though when it comes to commercialization? Because our industry has changed massively. Even in the, like, I've been DJing for 20 years, but full time 10 years. Like, even in the last 10 years, the like size of the industry has become so big.
Yeah.
And then I think different agendas come with writing records.
Yeah.
And the ease of using sampling. Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of pressure on artists like yourself. You know, you know, if you're making records as a DJ and you're just making club records, and the only thing that matters is getting that record played in a club and people like it, then I think that's easier. As things are becoming more commercial, as artists, there's more and more pressure on artists when they get to certain levels. It's like, well, you know, so-and-so is making records. If you want to be headlining this stage or in the top group of that headline on that festival, then you're going to have a hit.
Yeah.
You know, and I think as soon as you put pressure on that, on an artist to try and deliver something, you've got an A&R in there or a publisher, you're doing writing sessions, all of that stuff, and all that pressure to deliver a record, you kind of, and not everyone does, but it does put a lot of pressure on you, and you kind of lose why you were making records in the first place, you know. And I've seen it happen with big artists who've had numerous successful hit records, you know, and maybe they didn't intend those to be that, but when they get to that point, then there's always the pressure you got to come back with another, and it's got to be just as big or bigger. And that's just, that pressure on someone is, oh, I wouldn't want to be doing that.
Oh, fuck that, yeah. It's mad to say this, but I've said it multiple times. I'm lucky that I've never had a hit record. I've had big records, but I've never had a hit record. And, like, don't get me wrong, now would be the perfect time for me to have a hit record.
Yeah.
But, like, I've had artists on here that their not first, but, like, third record is, like, #1 UK. Yeah. And then I spoke to them about, like, the pressures, and they're like, yeah, I don't think they all necessarily tell the truth, but because they're like, yeah, there's zero pressure to write another hit, and then you hear 6 months down the line they get dropped from the label and they don't have a fucking clue what to do.
I know.
That's
And
the
then you're
hard
like
thing.
thinking, that's it, I'm a failure. But you could be putting, volume out, great club records. Every time you do that, people love it and people go and buy it and people want to hear it. And, having a hit record it can put a lot of pressure on you. I mean, you think of like Liza Rose, her first proper record was number one.
Did you guys work that?
War. We didn't work that, no. But I loved that record as soon as I heard it. And we're talking about the old samples, regurgitating the old samples.
Huge sample.
When I heard that, I was like, that's a brilliant use of an old sample. No one's going to know what that is. And I can't remember off the top of my head, but I remember the record, Lisa Cult Jam or something, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I remember it thinking, what a brilliant use of a sample. And I heard it on, I don't know, Tongi or someone played it the first time I heard it. And I never really thought about, oh my God, someone should sign that. That's going to be massive. I just loved it as a record,
Yeah.
And then look, she's made great records since, but I think there would always be an element, especially when she was signed to a big label, was to deliver the hit, a follow-up. And that's just pressure. That's horrible.
Well, it's also like, I think in the situation where you have the ability to promote and to kind of give a record the opportunity to make it a hit, right?
Yeah.
You guys can't make it a hit, but you can give everything. None of us know what a hit record is going to be, but you guys have the ability to potentially allow a record that has the potential to be a hit record to take it to that next level.
Yeah.
Like, there must be countless times where you're all in the office and going, we have just got the biggest record ever, and it completely flops.
No, it's never happened. Never happened. No, I mean, there comes a point, I say this, I've been saying this forever, when I was an A&R guy, radio plugger, whatever, there comes a point where the record has to stand up on its own two legs. At some point, it has to deliver itself. And we get it to that point. That's all we can do. And then you got to hit that right moment, that right period in time where it will connect. You might get some spark with an online thing. It might be a festival headliner playing it somewhere that just gets shared, or YouTube or something, and something that will just make that record pop, But then, like you say, there's been plenty of times where, we think this is going to be massive. As soon as you hear it, everyone's like, fuck yeah, this is going to be wicked. And then nothing.
And I think it's really interesting when the whole industry get behind a record, but it just doesn't connect with the public.
Yeah.
And realistically, the public are they're the judges of all of this.
Yeah.
And they get to choose it.
Yeah. I mean, look, the thing is also, what is success? What is success?
Exactly.
Does it have to sell a billion? Does it have to make a billion streams?
Yeah.
Or does it have to just be a record that everyone loves? Maybe you didn't sell as many or stream as many as the label was hoping that they budgeted for, etc. But it could be fantastic for the artist because everyone thinks it's a great record, want to listen to it, want to dance to it. And for me, that should be success. But obviously, I got bills to pay, so I need records to sell because that way people will pay us to work their records,
I guess that is the thing, is like when you're sat down with a new artist, like what are those conversations that initially are had with a brand new artist that are kind of coming on the scene and you're like really excited about that, or you have a bigger label, a major label, a big independent? What are those initial conversations of your expectations and their expectations?
I mean, we'll be very realistic as to, look, we love the record. We think it's got potential. We think we can get it played here, etc. We think as a new artist, we get some press around it. We get some streaming, some good club play, and then let's sit down and look at it. Let's see where we're at and see if it's worth committing a little bit more time and energy into. The label might think, is it maybe worth spending some marketing budget on it now that we've got this little bit of momentum? We always work with the artist, the label, the manager, sort of monitoring the progress of a record. Like, we've had hits that have gone on to be global hits, and sell billions of streams, but at first no one wants to touch them.
Yeah.
It's taken so long to get, but the thing is, one thing that my team are very good at is identifying that, things take time. You got to hit that sweet spot to get it right. And also just to be patient and knowing when to push. You know, Sometimes there's a lot of pressure. Oh, we need this to hit now. And like, well, it's not ready. You're
Yeah.
just going to have to wait, you know.
And I think every record is so important to every artist
Yeah, of
and
course.
every label. And I think that's something that I've learned to kind of manage in my own career, and also releasing other people's record labels, is like manage expectations of like, yeah, of course we want every record to be multi-million streams, of course we
Yeah,
do, but
yeah,
that's not realistic. And especially if we're just putting out a super underground club record, like that, there you can't go in with those expectations. And I think it's really helped me as an artist is like going in with a lot less expectations of like, it then doesn't feel as much as a failure when it doesn't do as well
yeah,
as other records that you're comparing it to, or whatever. I don't know.
yeah. Look, we're very careful about not to oversell what
Yeah.
we think is achievable. We're trying, because anything that you do over and above that, you look like a champion. You're like, a winner. So, and we don't do that because we want to look like the best. We do it because we will try and keep everyone's reality in check.
Yeah.
And then, because then the last thing you want is someone coming back saying, well, you said you were going to do this, or you said it was going to do that. But yeah, look, it's putting records out is not an easy thing, and promoting them is not easy either. You know what I mean? And it's so easy to put music out. If we go back to when I was first DJing and playing all those classics, well, they weren't classics at the time, but you used to go into a record shop on a Friday, and they keep a little box there of all the latest bits that they know you're going to like, and you'd be in there to be 50 DJs or 20 DJs, and all of them going to play all around the country or all around the world that weekend, and they're playing your bits of records. You're like, I'll have that, and it'd be like one of 20
Yeah.
test pressing, one of 20, 25, and you could have that record and work it and take your time with it and play it knowing no one else had it. Whereas these days, you don't have to go to the trouble of pressing a road testing it. If it's going to work, is it worth investing more money, getting more copies pressed, and then eventually maybe getting signed? I mean, it's so easy to put music out. There's so much of it about, and then there's so many records released every week on Spotify, etc., on Beatport and so on. It's like, how do you get heard?
Well, this is goes on to that. The next question is like, with what you said, is I know there's huge positives to that, with the sense of you literally don't have to have a label. You don't have to have a sign off from anyone. You can literally, and there's plenty of people that happened over the last few years that have put something up on SoundCloud and it just fucking went, right?
Oh, completely.
Like so many. But the negative side of that, and I don't want to just drag out the negatives, but like, what are the negatives to that in a sense of actually trying to run a business in the music industry?
I mean, I can only go from what our business is, and our business is we get sent a lot of music, and we kind of, keeping it, the reality check that I was talking about earlier. We like, actually it's not good enough, and we can hear some potential in it, but we just know we're not going to be able to do a job that is worth taking time away from other records potentially that we're working on, and we don't want to do the wrong thing by an artist. We're always honest. We say, look, we like it, we just don't think we can do anything with it. And they'll go off and get someone else to do it, and they'll work with someone else, and it's great, and I always wish everyone the very best. And also, and I think I started listening up on this point as well, was there was, when I had no money and people are sending you records and you're not quite sure about them, but you're thinking, I could get paid here. But I've always deliberately, and we still do the same, say no, because if it's not right, we just won't work it. But then when we commit to something, we really go for it. But, the fact that, getting back to your question, the ease of how it is to make music, to put stuff on SoundCloud, to produce and get loads of, volume out, etc., it does make things difficult, because it makes it very difficult to create enough noise to get heard. And that's kind of what we do. You know, I feel like we act as a filter for the press titles, for radio stations, etc. They know if we're sending them something, we've done our due diligence, we've listened to loads of other stuff. We know what works, what doesn't work. So generally, if you're getting something from us, it's generally worth a listen. And that's all we can get it to, is it's worth a listen. And then if it catches fire, then we can help take it all the way.
And I think it's really important, because I think it's very easy to communicate nowadays. Like, I could DM Pete Tong now, I could DM Danny Howard, like literally anybody on radio, any DJ in the world, we can all DM them, right?
Yeah.
But I think there's still a level of, if it's coming from a credible source. And you guys act as that credible source. And I think it's sitting back and going, you know what? I can make the music. I can DJ. Why am I now going to try and do everything else myself?
Yeah.
Like,
I
go
think if they know,
let the professionals.
If they know it's coming from us, they know that someone is investing in the record, because we're not a charity. They know we're and look, and to be fair, we do things if we see potential to help people out. But you know, they know if they're investing in us, then they've got real belief in the record. Whether that's you or the label or the distributor or someone's really believes in this record, they're going to invest in it. You know, they're putting time and money into this record, so they'll listen to it.
So going from when you started out radio plugin, obviously the industry's changed. We now have streaming in the world.
Yeah.
And streaming and radio feel like, I don't think radio necessarily feels that streaming's a competitor, but it feels like streaming feels like radio is a competitor.
Yeah, definitely.
How important is radio nowadays in a sense of an artist's career, and in comparison to streaming?
I think look, I think radio is still really important to an artist. I think the editorial side you get from a well-versed radio presenter who understands music and the scene and where it's coming from, whether that be Zane Lowe on Apple, whether that be Pete Tong or Danny Howard or Sarah or Ari or whatever. You know, it's I think when you've got someone who, and I still listen to radio because all the time, you know, and I want someone to tell me a little story about the act. You know, I want to know who's made the record and what. Oh, by the way, they made this record, or they work with so and so, and it just gives you a bit of a backstory. With streaming, you get release radar come in, and we talked about it. The algorithm identifies what you're into. There's no information about who the hell these people are, and you know, I've got a pretty good understanding of the business and artists and music, and I still happen to find myself Googling or looking down the Spotify page to work out who that person is, where they're from, you know. So I think radio is really important for that editorial side. At the same time, it depends on, a lot of people don't consume or find out new music via radio anymore. And I don't think they find out about it from streaming so much. You know, my kids are early 20s. They find their music still from TikTok.
It's crazy.
You know?
It's crazy.
You know, we have Radio 1's playing in our kitchen 24/7, you know, and there's always music playing, and you know, I'll be cranking tunes that I like, and you know, so they're fully aware of what's hot, but they still find out about their music from TikTok. They're not from streaming. They'll consume it from streaming.
That's really interesting. So I guess on a business model for Listen Up, is that something that you guys talk about? Is that something you look into? Is like, how do we get influencers on TikTok to then help promote? Like, where does that even start?
Yeah, don't worry. That's an ongoing conversation. It's a difficult one. You know, it's a difficult one. It's something that we're looking into. I mean, you think about, I don't know, what we're talking 10 years ago, and all the blogs, all the EDM blogs and everything that sort of surfaced, that some have continued, some have turned into magazines, whatever, some haven't. But you know, the blog space was but I don't see social media, whether it's TikTok or Instagram, being as informative as that. You know, you've got all your like Instagram pages, techno Bibles, whatever, you know,
Yeah.
culture of house, all of these sorts of things, you know, and they're putting clips up of DJs playing music. And I follow all those things because, again, I want to know what's new,
What's
you know,
new?
and if
Yeah.
Corolla or Kind of Music or one of that lot play a record, I'm like Shazamming it and writing it down and waiting for it to come out, trying to find it, you know. So but there's no editorial with that. You know,
No.
there's very little, you know, it's, I'll find myself looking through the comments on an Instagram post, like where someone thinks they know what it is, and that's the way you're finding out. But I think, I don't find streaming, apart from a sales thing and a consumption thing, I don't find that anywhere near as useful as radio. And maybe that's because I'm old school, you know, but I still think there's a big value in radio.
No, I totally agree, and I think there's, as on the artist side of things, I think the radio form of on Spotify or Apple Music is when you get editorial support when your record gets put into a playlist, right?
Yeah.
And I think from the other side of that is when Pete Tong, Danny, Sarah, Ariel, Zane, anyone plays your records on radio. But I think for me, the specialness about radio is that each DJ has a 2-hour slot or a 3-hour slot. And if they're picking your record, you're taking up their time.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a privilege to be able to be chosen out of all those, like, I think it's 110,000 records get put on Spotify every single day.
Yeah.
Like out of, and I think it's so easy as an artist to expect that, to have the expectation of like, I should be getting played on these people. And
once you've got a few records out and you realize how difficult it is. And
yeah,
I mean, I get a buzz still of, you know, a record, maybe one that wasn't as obvious that we believe in, and then we give it to some radio people or some club people, and I still get a buzz knowing that, oh, they're playing the record. You know, I listen to Tong or Danny or someone's show at the gym during the week, and I'll hear the records that we actually thought was good, them playing it. I've also heard records that they played and we passed on, and you're like, what were you doing? And it sounds so good when you hear it on air. You know, sometimes when you're running around the office and you're not listening properly and you maybe pass on it, and then you hear it in the context of a radio show, it's like, oh God, yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, but I think that's the whole point of music, right? It's so opinion based. It's there's no right or wrongs.
No.
At the end of the day.
And look, there's no right or wrongs. And I think with you know, talking about the industry and the A&Rs and how they find records, you know, in my day we used to, I was a DJ as well as an A&R, so I'd buy a record on a Friday and play it all weekend, and then I'd think, this is a really good record, we should sign this. I did that with Love Parade, The Hall. We signed that record.
Oh, wow.
And I remember me and Jules worked together, and I remember the pair of us listening to it on Monday and thinking, oh, this record's pretty good. And then I had the label where that came from Belgium come in that week, and they played us a load of music, and I was like, nah, I wasn't feeling anything. And then they're like, oh, we got this, but you probably won't like it. And they played it, and it was The Hall, and we're like, oh fuck, no, we do like that. Let's sign it, you know. And I think that was how we used to A&R a lot of the dance records in those days. You just play them out and they'd be great, you know, whether it was Josh Wink or whatever. We'd play these records and we'd sign them because they blew up a club that weekend. And but now, you know, the A&Rs, they'll be sitting there, they'll be looking at stats and
it's not A&R in
graphs, and you know, for us it was always about, you know, goosebumps. Basically, if it gave you goosebumps, then you should sign it. But yeah, I personally think it should still be about that, and without being like talking about, oh, it's better back in the day, but realistically,
it's like, I guess you'll probably be able to speak on it more than me, but major record labels, especially majors,
Yep.
when it comes to an A&R level, it's not necessarily about the artist. It's about, can we monetize this one record?
Yeah.
And how much can we make out of this record? Because it's expensive running record labels nowadays. And you know what, especially in electronic music, when you're, let's say for instance, a Warner, like, they don't need to really worry about dance music. Dance music doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of their business.
No.
But
a big dance record as a major, because I worked in the major label system for a long time, it will help you get market share, and that really matters. That really matters. If you've got, when we used to put out our dance records on Manifesto for like 10 years or whatever it was, it was always like, we'd put them out, not all of them would hit, but you get enough of them that go top 10, top 20. It just adds to the overall label status and their market share. But yeah, I mean, the A&R these days, I've got a lot of very good friends who are major label A&Rs, and I feel their pain sometimes when you got to put your balls on the line with a massive advance for a record. You're in a bidding war and you commit to it, and it doesn't go that well. Man, that's brutal. That's brutal.
What's your thoughts on that, though? What's your thoughts on the like these massive advances going around? Because each year there's always like a few that everyone's like, what the actual fuck?
I know.
Like, that somebody paid that much money for that record.
I know.
But like, what's your actual thoughts on it?
Look, we used to do it back in my day, and I signed a couple of absolute stinkers for more money than I'd ever paid on a record. And then I had, Josh Wink, Higher State of Consciousness, paid £3,000 for it. It's like that. It's just my thought on it. It's just supply and demand. It's basic economics. And when everyone wants at record and everyone's going in, I think people lose sight of, actually, is this going to recoup? Is this worth it? They just want to beat the other, and it's supply and demand, isn't it? If there's only 2 or 3 of those records and everyone thinks that's the record we got to sign.
Yeah.
And they throw.
Is it ever the record? That's the thing for me, is like, I'm sure I could be very wrong, and I'm happy to be wrong. But those big records with the huge advances, it doesn't ever feel like they do what they are expected to do. No,
I mean, there's probably been some that have, I mean, I don't know specific. I mean, look, Eliza Rose, for instance, that I don't know the exact numbers. I've heard rumors, but that wasn't cheap. But it went to #1, and it sold loads of records, so that was probably worth it. But I think there's a lot of those crazy advances being paid out that don't make any financial sense once that record is being released.
I love it for the artists. To be fair. I'm all for it. It's like, if somebody's getting paid $250,000 for a record that they spent a few hours on making in their basement, like, I am all for that. Yeah. Like, it's the one time artists can win back from the majors. Yeah. In my mind.
Yeah. No, I hear you on that. I mean, it's there's lots of records that are doing really well that haven't been signed for a load of money. There's a lot of records have done well recently where someone's invested in the artist, not just that one record. And I think that, and there is some labels that I know of that had their fingers burnt a few times, and they are trying to develop artists themselves and own them for the world, because then it starts to make sense. When you're licensing a record territory by territory, it's
it's not worth it.
It's not worth it.
So I guess following that, like, I've personally not seen that on a major label sense at this moment in time. I'd like to be told that I'm wrong, but when did it change for you where it became purely about the single record and not about the artist?
To be honest, when I was an A&R, we did sign some artists. The guy who ran the label at the time, Eddie Gordon, we signed Byron Stingley, Todd Terry, and we signed them to develop them as artists and make albums. But we also signed loads of just one-off dance records because they were great
Yeah.
one-offs. We didn't think about whether Rank One was going to go and have some more hits, or Yolanda, or Yamanda, sorry, or you know, we never really thought. It was always just about the record, and if you got a second one out of it, then great. But we didn't pay silly money either, you know. And
Yeah.
I think unfortunately in electronic music, it's still very much about the record,
Yeah.
and can you get a follow up? Because, and I was looking back at some of your previous shows, and we were talking about, you did one with Joel Corey, didn't you? Who we
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
with, and he was saying how he had the number one electronic album, but at the same time, as good as it sounds, it's not really a major sort of result, in the sense that because no one's making albums.
No.
So I think that's indicative of the industry, and people aren't consuming albums. So why invest in an artist for an album? You're investing in an artist maybe for a series of great singles, you know. But
I hate that you said that, because I've just done an album. So
yeah,
fuck you.
I mean, look, at the same time though, people, I mean, I do listen to albums, don't get me wrong, I do listen to albums, but I think for an artist, you know, and for their creativity and expression, then an album as a body of work is important to them, you know.
What I think for that is purely it.
And your album's very good as well, Will. I have
Thank
heard
you, mate. I think for me that is purely it, and it's kind of when commerce gets in the way of creating art to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And especially nowadays, from what I can, from the when I started playing to now, there does come a level of commerce comes first over the actual creation of art, or what are we writing records for?
I don't even think it's commerce as well, though. I don't think people a lot are consuming albums, you know.
No, I mean like just generally writing records.
Okay, right.
As in
commerce.
like,
yeah, I see.
Yeah. Like what's the goals of this record before we even write the record?
Yeah.
Who's going to be playing this? Where's this going to? Which I think has always been there. There's always been a level, right? Because like artists wanting to, like, let's say for instance, an artist wanting to sign to Hot Creations, right, with Jamie Jones. Like, you have to have a level of a sound to be signed to that record label.
Yeah.
So there's always been that. I just think it's slowly changing a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, you see that in the length of these records.
Yeah.
I had Danny Tenaglia on the podcast, and like his original music for Music is the Answer. I think it's like
12 minutes or something.
It's like 14 minutes.
Right. Yeah.
14 minutes, and you're like, fair play. It's done 14 million streams on Spotify, which is great for a 14-minute record.
Yeah.
But I think that's the interesting thing now, is like records get changed because of algorithms and because of where it's being placed.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I hate it when I source one of those new bits of music that I was talking about, and you know, and then I want to put on one of my playlists on Spotify, and all it's got is a 3-minute 20 edit. I'm like, I want the full version, you know.
Yeah, I had a conversation with Amada the other day about it with the album, and it's really interesting because I wrote the album not as a club record,
right?
So like every record was made as a 3.5, 4, 5 minute record.
Yeah,
like, and then I made extendeds,
yeah,
so I could play it, not for anybody else to play, but so I could play it. So we were having this conversations like, should the extendeds go on streaming or anything like that? And I was just like, you know what, it wasn't made for that.
Yeah,
like it as maybe, but why does somebody want to hear a kick drum for 2 minutes at the front?
Exactly.
But if the record, let's say for instance, use the Danny Tenaglia, is a 14-minute song, then people should hear the 14-minute.
Yeah, and there's enough, you know, texture in the length of the record, you know, peaks and troughs, you know, whatever. Then why not? I love it. I mean, if you're going to the tube into work in the morning and you got a 12-minute record and it's it's got loads going on. I'm happy listening to that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I love that.
And I was happy listening to Danny Tenaglia playing at Space Miami 20 odd years ago. Do you know what I mean? I was happy listening to it for 14 minutes there. I think he'd probably play it back to back as well. So it's like 30 minutes of the one record. But
that doesn't happen nowadays.
No.
Explain that to people that are young and listening.
Yeah, I mean, look,
I
I used to go out a lot. I still go out a lot. But, those days we were, we'd be going to, was it Groove Jet? I can't remember where Tenaglia used to play in Miami. And then it was Space Miami afterwards. But yeah, everyone would play long records. Everything was 7, 8, 9 minutes long anyway. We'd see Sasha and Digweed. We go to Twilo in New York, see them play. And, they'd have records and they just play them back to back. So you might have a 9-minute record played into another 9-minute record, the same record. And, you'd be like 20 minutes, but it was great.
Yeah.
I used to love it. Whereas now it's a lot quicker. You need to move from one to the other, I think.
No, I totally agree. I think also that unless you're Villa Lobos, and then you're just and then no fucks are given.
Exactly.
But I think there's a level of that is our fault. That's not the crowd.
Yeah.
Like that's the DJ's fault to a certain extent. It's like realistically, if somebody's coming to see you and you don't play your biggest record twice, that's your fault.
Exactly.
The crowd are gonna love it.
I know. Yeah.
I never forget when I used to work with Tom Brown in Ibiza when we used to record like DJ sets.
Right.
And like I did 3 summers of We Love Space. We like recorded all of their podcasts. Yeah.
Okay. I used to play on the Sundays.
We've met in our past life, but you would never have recognized me ever.
Did you not have a beard?
No, I didn't have a beard.
I would definitely not recognise you.
I had hair.
Okay.
And I looked about 15.
Wow.
So yeah, I think I've definitely recorded you play like back in the day.
Yeah.
And I remember when like DJs would play records like 3 times, like the same record, like 3 times in the night, and each time it would get an even bigger response.
But also those days, and what we talked about earlier, were you might have one of 5 copies in the world of that record. And, cause when I was at the label, people would send me demos on DAT, and I'd be like, just get all of these records cut on acetates. Sasha and Digweed, all of these, I used to have all of these acetates and just have a massive, heavy box of record or acetates. And I know that no one had these records. So I would play them a couple of times because people that's the only way I got gigs was people come and see me because they knew I was the only one who had those particular records, or only one of a handful of DJs around the world that would have those records. And, me and like, Seb Fontaine, we used to swap records because he'd have one copy of something. I'd be like, have you got a gig tonight? No. Or can I have your record so I can play? And it's like, but because you couldn't go and listen to it on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube the following day if you're a kid who heard in the rave. So you couldn't hear it anywhere. The only way you could hear it is you play a couple of times in a club, and people would want that, People love that. And also it's like about building it, It's like you'd walk away from a gig thinking, oh, that record, what was that? And that'd be the first time you heard it. And it's good promotion, wasn't it?
Oh, 100%. And I think especially if it's, I never forget like when like my brother went to a party and he'd like come back and like be like, dude, I heard this record, like it went like this. And like they were like special times because when you found that record was so precious to you.
I know.
Yeah, it's definitely. So moving on to Listen Up a little bit.
Yep.
You guys decided to take things to America. Mm-hmm. At what point did you realize that there was a market in America for dance music? Obviously, it came from there, but it got lost for a very long time.
I don't know. I think we got to the point where it wasn't so much a commercial decision. It's like, right, let's go to America and make a load of money. Wish it was that easy. But we
especially with Macca's.
Exactly, with Mac over there. Yeah, exactly. Mac can sell ice to the Eskimos, that boy. So, it was more like people wanted coverage in America, and we could
Yeah.
do a lot of that from our UK office. But I think when you got boots on the ground and you got 52 states, it's a big old country. If you've got a team in the US on that time zone, you get much better
Yeah.
service. You get much better sort of campaigns worked because people are there, And I think there was a big part of it was because of that. We had a lot of European artists traveling to America, making music they wanted exposure on in America, touring around America. I mean, the touring over there for the DJs,
Yeah.
European DJs, is crazy. I was catching up I spoke to Nick Fanchuti, a really good friend of mine, the other week, and he was saying he's like in the States almost every weekend,
Yeah.
And you think there's 52 states there, you got a gig there every week. That's it. You're done.
I think I was looking at my like old tour calendars, 2018. I did 112 shows, and 100 of them were in America.
Wow.
And you're like, how?
Yeah.
But then you realize that like there's so many places to play, and like we're just not that fortunate in. And to be fair, in the whole of Europe, like America's bigger than the whole of Europe. In the sense of each city is like massive, and each state has huge cities everywhere. Like in California, you can play 10 times in California.
San Diego, LA, all in 3 nights.
It's crazy, and it's actually really nice to see, because I think I started my career, not started it, but I had success in America before anywhere. Well, I have more. I still can't even be booked in Bristol, let alone anywhere else. But like, I think
was that through Dirty Bird? How did that come about?
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, Dirty Bird initially.
Yeah.
And to be fair, like America now, it's really nice to see a lot of European, British people go over to the States and have extreme success.
Yeah.
Like even I was talking to Nick as well about it the other day, and like even in the sense where like Nick's been around for years, has been one of the biggest DJs in the world, and like still in certain situations finds it hard to play in England on regular occasions. So it's like, well, there's a market to go and earn money.
Exactly.
Like, go earn money and enjoy it.
And also playing at different crowds, different locations, different venues. It just keeps it exciting. I mean, when I was DJing a long time ago, it was up and down the motorway every week initially. And those clubs you'd probably be going back to at least every 6 weeks, which was great. And there is an element of joy about seeing the same faces regularly, having residencies, all those sorts of things, breaking records. It's not so easy when you're playing at a different venue every time, and you might come back to that venue once a year or maybe twice a year at best. So,
well, residencies aren't a thing anymore.
There was a lot more gigs in the UK. A lot more gigs.
Yeah, because, and I think it's also another question I want to talk about is the change of venues generally in the UK, and not just the UK. It's the same it happened in New York. It happened in. Not to be fair, it only really happened in New York in America, where a big venue comes in and just gobbles up all of the little venues.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that when it comes to what you guys do as best as promoting music and creating culture?
It's. I mean, it's not. It's just the way it is. Unfortunately, it's we talked about commercial. Business, etc. earlier. It's just the nature of the beast. A lot of these clubs, the big clubs, will get exclusivity deals in place. So it's like, well, you can't play for so-and-so up the road because you just play for me. And if you don't want to play for me exclusively, then don't play for me at all. The pressure's put on the DJs. Look, I mean, when I could be playing in, I did 4 gigs or 5 gigs in the old days, up and down the motorway. I'd start up in Leeds, come down through Sheffield, Birmingham, not do 1 or 2 in London. It's like all on one night. I mean, it was crazy, but it was, there were so many towns around the UK, Wales, Scotland we were in all the time, Ireland, North and South. We could be playing so many places. And crowd, you are, like you're talking about, you're building a culture. There's me and there was a load of other DJs all on rotation playing at all these places, working records, building records. And this was the days before streaming, when it was physical release and you could build your record up to a certain point, so when it dropped on that day it'd go boom. Whereas now you drop it, we do as much as we can, but you're generally promoting the record once it's out, and then you're playing catch up. But yeah, I mean, it's just the way it is, unfortunately. Because there's so much money in the game now, and they're buying up talent, exclusivity deals. It's a terrible time. I'm part of the Nighttime Industries Association. There's so many clubs being closed down. They can't afford to keep them open. People's spending habits are changing. I don't want to get all political
it's true.
But there's uni towns where kids would go out every night on the lash to a club. Cost of living. The kids maybe aren't as hardcore as we were. They don't want to get up and go to the gym in the morning, whereas we would just go crazy every night. So you all those clubs, they need that income Monday to Sunday. Now they've just got maybe the weekend and maybe one night during the week where they can turn the lights on and have people in. So it's made it very difficult for those clubs to stay open.
It's also really expensive because they're always in major cities.
Yeah.
Rent to keep the lights on is just impossible.
It's
impossible.
It's tough, And look, we're not talking UK specific. We're talking most countries now. It's tough for nightlife venues to stay open, which makes it difficult for talent to get gigs. Makes it difficult for venues and promoters to nurture new talent as well.
That's the thing. That's the thing for me. Is more so is like, realistically, let's say for instance, like Bristol, for example, like there's 3-4 venues and they're all over 800 capacity.
Yeah.
And you're like, where's the 300 caps where you used to build community and build and allow artists to kind of grow a fan base in their hometown before they can graduate to the bigger venues or then even get seen by and also learn how to DJ.
I know, which is a very important thing, Yeah. I mean, I still love the warm-up. I love the master, the artistry that goes into a warm-up, playing when there's not one person on that dance floor, and building it up as people start walking into a venue, go to the bar, and you're seeing their heads nod, and you're thinking, right, I've got them, and you slowly wheel them into the dance floor. That's an art. And a lot of people just make a record, it's a hit, and then they get booked to play places. They've not been a DJ. I mean, it's a shame.
It's a shame, but it goes back to what we were saying. It's also changed now, where people aren't clubbing for as long as they used to.
Yeah.
Like, unless you go to like Space in Miami or like Ibiza, it isn't the length of nights is what it used to be.
Yeah.
Right. So like it now starts at 11 and it ends at 5.
Yeah.
Like it used to go till the next morning, 11 the next morning.
Exactly.
And you'd have people playing for 3-4 hours. Where now it's not. If you get 2 hours, you're lucky.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. It's a good point.
So it's like it's changed, and it's not worse. It's not better.
No, it's just different. It's different. And it's like, look, if we talk about what we do as a company, music promotion, artist promotion, trying to build DJs up to get those better bookings, build artist profiles to increase their followers and their fan base, etc. But when you talk about DJs, how do you start off? How do I be? I mean, for me, and when I started, it was because we used to do little venues. We have a little posse, and then a bigger promoter up the road would be like, I'll be like, oh, can I get a warm-up gig at your club? And they'd be like, they knew I could bring 100 people with me.
Yeah.
And they were good people, and they wanted me. And that's, you used to have to build your little tribe, your little community to putting on loads of parties and being good at what you do, and It's different now. Now you have to have, well, how many Instagram followers you got, and you know, you don't know any of them, but you do to build numbers that really don't mean a great deal, apart from people are interested. You know, there is value in that, but I think it's just different.
It's different, and it's also I've always said this is like, as an artist, building a core foundation of fans, before you have that hit record, will allow you to have a consistent career after you've had the hit record as well, because we all know hit records don't last forever, unless you're Calvin. But like, unless you're someone where you are, again, it goes back to like Tiesto, David Guetta, like Calvin, like those guys have just consistently churned out hits over the last 15, 20 years. I mean, and I've worked with Guetta and Calvin, but I worked with Guetta for so long, you know, and this is a guy who still gets so excited about new music, you know, just absolutely loves it. Special, man. Special.
And you think he was playing on the terrace at Space in Ibiza and super cool records, and you know, I know his manager at the time, Carolyn, she was driving him up and down the motorway in the UK for no money when he was a big DJ in France, just building his profile. I mean, he's worked hard to get there, you know.
Well, I think that is also it. You see it from the business side of things and from behind the scenes. How much of this industry now is still about hard work?
So much of it. And also hard work, thick-skinned, you know, putting records out, not getting the reaction that you thought it was going to get. You just got to move on, you know. But hard work and good people. Like, you know, you just got to be, you know, look, I'm not saying everyone who's successful is a nice person, but you know, it's about, you know, it's hard work. It's all those things, you know. Look, that's the same in any industry. You know, it doesn't just land on your lap. And look, it might do. Like these people it has landed on their lap. They've had the right record or right place, right time. But it's about how you stay in that lane and how long you stay successful is hard. That's the hard work. Really is the hard work, you know. And a good team around him. Calvin's got a fantastic team around him, you know, and you know, loves what he does, you know.
That's the crux of it, right?
You know. You're successful. You want to stay there. Don't tell me you don't. You know, but you know, you got to love what you're doing, and because if you don't, and like, you know, we're talking about trying to make a hit record earlier, that puts so much pressure on you. If you're not making something you believe in, it'd be very, you know, it'd be amazing if it went on to do something. You know, if you don't believe in it yourself.
I agree, man. I agree. Dude, we've just done an hour. Wow. I think we can, flew by. We can keep going, but I think that was the perfect way to end on that one.
Yeah. No, that's so good.
Before we start, or before we end, how can people get involved with the Listen Up? If you're a listening artist, how can people get music to you guys? Like, what's the protocol?
Well, I mean, I think the best thing is to go on the website. We have new music at. Don't quote me; it might be completely wrong. But we have it's on the website. It'll be like new music at Listen Up, and look, everyone listens to everything that comes in there, and you'd be amazed how many great records have gone on to be hits we found through there. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot that we won't work, but we'll always get back to people.
Cool, man. Mate, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
I enjoyed that. It went so quickly.
I did just get a text from Jacko going, whatever you do, don't mention Luke's Essential Mix from 1945.
What a wanker. 24 years ago, my Essential Mix. And I did do a few others as well. People don't know that. Well, now they do.
Now they do. Mate, thanks so much. I'll probably see you over the summer. So keep safe.
I hope so, mate. I would love that. I won't see you in Miami, but have a great time.
Nice one, mate. Are you doing IMS?
I'll be at IMS. Yeah, we're always there.
I'll see you there.
See you poolside.
Yeah, mate.
All
Look
right.
after yourself.
Nice one, Will. Thanks,
Cheers,
mate. Cheers. See you later.
Bye. And that's a wrap. Big love to Luke for coming on. Love that episode. Please share it. Please subscribe. Please give us a review. Till next time, people. Keep safe.